All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Angie Peacock. I was trained as a social worker and a therapist, and I'm also a subject of the film Medicating Normal. I volunteer for doing outreach for the film, and I host conversations like this one today. Today is our 42nd interview, and our guest is Jeannie Bass. We first met Jeannie, well, I heard about her due to an NBC Nightly News report about, Hearing Voices, the Hearing Voices Network movement. And I felt like kindred spirit with her, like, wow, she has these unique experiences and she thinks about them in a different way. And it really was like a light bulb moment for me to realize, we have all these preconceived notions of people with these strange experiences, and we shouldn't like buy into what the medical model says. There's always alternative, there's an alternative way to like view people's experiences, and they can create meaning for themselves. So that's what I most liked about that, seeing that piece about her. So I'll read you her bio really quick. Jeannie Bass is a voice hearer and a person who lives with other unique experiences, usually labeled as psychosis by psychiatry and much of society. She has built a life of purpose, not despite her disability, but because of what navigating life with multiple realities has taught her. Since finding the International Hearing Voices movement a decade ago, Jeannie has learned to make meaning and work with the voices she hears that others don't. This is contrary to the former narrative of not separating how she saw the world from voices, visions, and beliefs, while relying on a system for survival that left little hope for a life worth living. Jeannie is a longtime member of the Hearing Voices Network USA Board of Directors. She works as Director of Peer Support Services at an inpatient psychiatric hospital. Her story was featured in an NBC special in 2018. Jeannie will launch her website, Voices with Reason, a space for her writing, a collection of resources, and a place to learn more about her work very, very soon. So welcome, Jeannie. How are you doing today?
I am so excited to be here. Yeah, I agree with the kindred spirit. I've been following your journey for quite a while.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So we have lots of, let me make sure, hold on. I'm getting a little problem here from Facebook. Let me just make sure what's going on here. It keeps giving me a pop-up. Let me make sure, hold on, before we keep going. Sorry, I'm getting out of the flow here, but I want to make sure everybody sees us. Facebook is telling me something weird that I've never seen before. What is going on here? I don't get it. It says I'm live. And I just texted Nicole. Okay, we're fine. Sorry. Sorry, guys. Let me pick back up. I just ruined the whole vibe. Anyway, so today we have Jeannie with us, and I have some questions for her, and we're gonna have a really engaging conversation. If you have any comments, be sure to leave them in the box, and Nicole will get them to me. And any questions for her. So Jeannie, can you tell us kind of what brought you to the Hearing Voices Network, into this work?
Sure. Yeah. I never thought I would ever be part of anything but the mental health system as a person receiving services. Around the time that I found the Hearing Voices Network, I was in a day treatment program had been there for 3.5 years. And, it was funny. There was this woman there, I won't say her real name, but she'd been there 10 years. And I remember being like, we were waiting for our ride to come get us. We had these rides that brought us. And I was thinking, wow, like she's been here 10 years. I hope they let me stay 10 years.
Wow.
I was just really, I'd gone from being really tumultuous and out of control and chaotic in my life to going through a really bad hospitalization and being like, I will do anything not to go back there. Even though my life had revolved around going in and out of hospitals, this particular time was, with a lot of involuntary medication and just really scary things, I was willing to do anything they wanted. And I became very compliant, and I found safety sort of hiding out. And, I had this friend at day treatment, her name was Amy, and she was funny. She just blew out of there one day. She had been there a long time too. And then I ran into her and she was like, Jeannie, you won't believe what I'm involved in. Like, you're not sick. They just don't want you to know you're in recovery. And I was like, what is she talking about? And she invited me to a meeting with the Northeast Recovery Learning Community, a peer community. And I went, and like, there was all these people that were similar to me, and they wanted me to like do things with them. And they were like welcoming, and, they believed in me in a way nobody else had. So I slowly, started doing more and more with them, and I started gaining, confidence, and started to see myself as more than just a patient or a client, who, was supposed to take their medication and go to their program 5 days a week. And, sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, let me just turn that down. I'm so sorry. I know this is a live.
No, don't worry.
Okay.
Don't worry.
And, and there was a special person that worked for the RLC, Kellyanne O'Brien, and she's since passed away. But, she was the first person that sort of told me about people that hear voices being all over the world, and supporting each other. And then I looked it up one day. I hadn't been on a computer in years, and I Googled like people who hear voices and don't want them to go away, and people who hear voices and are normal, because I thought I had this like totally, I was going to be the first voice here in the world who was going to, not go into hospitals, not lose control. I had learned all these ways to cope with my voices out of desperation, really. And it was a journey, saying no to them when they controlled my life for the first time, and we can get into that more later, was one of the scariest things I've ever done in my life. But, and so I went to a training in Western Mass for the Hearing Voices Network. The Wildflower Alliance does a lot of Hearing Voices Network trainings, if anyone's interested, to learn how to facilitate groups. And my life really took off from there, and I got more involved in different ways. And I joined the HVM Board of Directors in 2014, and I got to help plan the World Hearing Voices Congress, a huge conference held in a different country every year. We had it in Boston in 2017. But I think the most important thing to mention about how I got involved, or why I got involved, is HVN changed my life. It took me from being helpless and hoping others would always care for me, and not really believing in myself at all, just saying, wow, I'm still hearing voices, like I'm hearing them right now. And I, no matter how difficult they get or how distressing, I'm going to be okay. And there's ways to make meaning and understand them that psychiatry and medication and nothing could ever really have given me in a way that, this community's given me.
Yeah. So that it kind of leads into it's the Hearing Voices Network.
I can't hear you.
Oh, weird. Can you hear me now? No.
I'm so sorry. I lost volume for a minute.
Oh, you muted. It's okay.
Yeah.
This is just the hour of technical difficulty.
I know.
It's fine. It's
and
totally
I'm hoping
fine.
my computer doesn't, I got a new work computer and I don't know how to shut off the ding. So I'm hoping that doesn't, it's late
okay.
Friday.
If it dings, it dings.
Okay.
Just roll with it. It's totally fine.
Okay.
Okay. So that kind of leads to the Hearing Voices Network. They have a very interesting, I don't know, they change the way people think about those who hear voices, and like what those voices mean, and what values, the organization itself can bring to help you think about your voices in a different way. So can you talk about how it started, how Hearing Voices Network started, its values, and how it helps people change their lives?
Sure. Yeah. And the first thing, jumping ahead and then I'll jump back, is I just want anyone that's watching, listening, that will watch later on YouTube to know, if you hear voices, if you have paranoia, if you see visions other people don't see, if you, feel things touching you other people don't experience, or, have beliefs that, maybe scare people or are misunderstood, or you have family members or people you care about, you're normal. Like there's nothing wrong with you. You are not broken. You are not a hopeless schizophrenic that needs to be locked away. I think it's important for people to understand that, in this community, we see each other as normal. Yes, what we go through is very unusual. But the research has shown, where a lot more has been done outside the US, that it's more common to hear voices than it is to even be left-handed. So, it's something that we, if you're not careful, you will get labeled. And, but if you think about it, lots of people hear voices. I'm sure everyone has been dreaming or sleeping and then is startled, right? And you've heard your name, or you've heard something and you're like, oh my God, like, that's what is that? Who is that? And when loved ones die, people will often hear their voice. Mediums, there's many acceptable ways of hearing voices and having unique experiences. I'd say the election and, our current affairs has taught us that lots of people have unusual beliefs, and it's just when you cross over that threshold to being sick and disordered, and in need of treatment as your only source of healing and solace, it's a very different world for you. So, the Hearing Voices Network is not new to the United States. It's been here, estimate around 2011, really jumped off here with Will Hall and Oryx Cohen and people from Western Mass, Sarah Davido, people from the Freedom Center. And it was founded in the 80s by a voice here, Patsy Hage, and psychiatrist Marius Rom, and his wife, who just passed away, Sandra Escher, a researcher. And Patsy was in an inpatient hospital, and Marius was her psychiatrist. And they were meeting, and he's like, Patsy, what can I do for you? And she was like, well, it's really nice, coming here and talking with you, but I kind of want to talk to other people that go through this, and see how they deal with it and like what it's like for them. So he got a group, made him think. And I skipped over the best part, Angela, which is she looked up at a crucifix on his wall. She had been reading the Bicameral Mind, which talked a lot about voice hearing, way back when. And she looked at the crucifix and she said, why do you get to believe in a God that you can't see or hear, but I can't believe that I'm hearing these voices that I know I'm hearing, like I'm actually hearing. Yeah. And so he got a group together, and I think a lot of people thought, he was himself out of his mind, and he was amazed. Like he watched, and people support each other. Nobody was writing scripts. Nobody was telling you, you're colluding, or the voices need to be eradicated and we need to medicate these out of you. But they were really supporting each other. And so, things grew from there. He went on sort of a Today Maury Povich fusion talk show, and they did a call-in, and they had people call in or write in that heard voices, and they said, let us know, were you in this, did you enter the psychiatric system for these voices, or did you not? Like, did you,
Wow.
Never. And so 750 people responded. 500 people had never been in psychiatric anything. And 250 people obviously had, but it made him realize that like more people heard voices than really, we understand. So, they had the first World Hearing Voices Congress, and then it went over, over to England, where it really exploded. So that was kind of the beginning of Hearing Voices Network. And it really is it's definitely voice hearer led, but it's important for people to know there's also, in the US, there's now a really strong family and friends, following. But there's also a lot of traditional mental health clinicians and professionals that, they get this. They get that the way of doing things, isn't helping people, isn't changing anything, and it's actually harming people. And so there's a lot of different people in the Hearing Voices movement. And I'm rambling. I'll let you jump over.
You're good.
Okay.
No, but I want to call attention to one thing that you kind of touched on, this idea of consensual reality, right? So like we're all, you could say it's the idea of being normal, and what the film is kind of about. Like, if you hear voices, that's not normal. You need to go get help. You need to get medicated. You might be dangerous, because that's the implied narrative behind that. So that leads to the next question. If paranoia, psychosis, the so-called schizophrenia, all these other extreme experiences are not brain diseases, then what are they? And I guess, like, can you explain more about, the meaning of voices? Like, if they're not this brain disease, scary thing that means I'm not in reality and I need to be medicated, then what does it mean?
Yeah, so I would say too, the first thing I'd want to say is, every single human being on Earth and maybe other planets has their own unique reality. They have their reality. We have our consensus reality where we can agree. We're on Facebook Live right now. I can see, your RV. I know that that's an RV. We agree on that. But then there's other things, like I'm hearing voices right now, and those are something I'm experiencing, but you're not. And it's so like crucial that people realize that it isn't like, okay, there's us and then there's them, the people that agree on all of reality. But once you, like I said, like cross over to the threshold of needing help and being seen as sick, then your reality, your unique individual reality, is sort of on trial, for whether it's valid or not. And the easy answer for why people hear voices, if it's not mental illness, and there's a little caveat to that I'll mention in a minute, is that it's connected to the person's life story in some way. And some people would say that's trauma, right? That those voices represent bad things that have happened to them, scary things, scary people. Sometimes it's not uncommon for people to hear an abuser's voice, or a voice that represents that oppression and that abuse. Other times it's spiritual. In shamanism, it's very normal to and acceptable to be waiting and hoping that you have the initiation of hearing voices. Mediums, that's like so normal. And other people, like, they might hear the voice of God, and they might then decide, metaphorically it represents their own power, and or different things. Some people really identify with being targeted individuals, and other people might say, oh, they're wearing tinfoil on their head, they think the government's after them. But there's lots of ways to understand your experiences. Other people, and many people that I've heard, will often identify with it being like a response to a stressful, noisy world. And I would say it's a pretty good consensus among voice hearers that stress and noise can often, busyness of the world can often, make voice hearing a little more difficult. But there's lots and lots of reasons. There's even been people, who identify with, aliens. And it's not about like, oh, does this person's, understanding of why they hear voices fit into society? It's, how does it impact this person's life, right? So if they hear voices that are meaningful to them, and it's like a spirit guide or something, and then psychiatry comes in and says, no, you're not, you're hearing auditory hallucinations, you're schizophrenic, you need our help, where does that connection to your life story go? You either got to decide to give in to their story and just live as sort of a passive person to treatment, or you have to find other ways to cope that really, make sense. And one of the values of HVN is that you have the freedom to make sense of your experiences any way you want. So nobody will ever tell you that you're mentally ill, or that you're having, traumatic voices. That's something a lot of us are really trying to go up against, is that not all people that hear voices or have unusual experiences are, it's not always rooted in trauma. But yes, that's something that's really fundamental, and really people using their own language and being able to speak for themselves. And we have like a tagline, we say, the movement really boils down to sharing your story, no more, no less. And it really is a social justice movement, seeking to free people from that, very narrow box that I know for me, kept me sick and really living quite an awful life.
Yeah. We have a question from the audience.
Sure.
It says, do most people who hear voices feel distress from that, at least initially?
Yeah, so I don't want to say that, I would never want to speak for all voice hearers. I will say that not everyone feels distress. Like, I'll give you an example. So kids often hear voices, especially like foster kids, you'll hear a lot. Like, I've had many people come to groups I've facilitated, because I've facilitated tons of groups over the years. And it's very common, like that I've heard, I was all alone. I didn't feel like I had anybody, taking care of me. I was playing on the floor and this voice was, talking to me. But no, it isn't always the case that when you start hearing voices, it's distressful. However, um, it does happen and it is scary. We call it, there's like 3 stages of voice hearing that Marius Rahm and Sandra Escher had come up with. And the first phase, they call it the startling phase, when you don't really know what's happening to you. Like I remember being at Barnes and Noble, drinking a cup of coffee at like 8:30 at night and looking out the window, and I started hearing a voice singing "Happy Birthday, Mary Magdalene." And, I went through this experience where I thought I was Mary Magdalene, and I, wandered the streets for all this time looking for disciples, and it was frightening, but it was actually, and we had a conversation about this in the Hearing Voices group the other day I was in, one of the most exhilarating, meaningful times of my life that nothing has ever been able to compare to. But yeah, that's one of the differences, is that, if we had a society where we said to people, oh, you're hearing voices, okay, that's normal, there's ways to work with them, I feel like a lot less people would be distressed. But it is important to know that many people hear positive voices, funny voices, voices that, make life better, that give them, that guide them. And I know that's true for some of my voices.
Yeah, I think it also, when you tell someone, I'm hearing a voice and it's telling me something, and they act startled and they're like, oh my God, that's,
Right.
especially like a family member, this has
Right.
happened in my own family, like, whoa, you need to go to the hospital right now. And then when you go to the hospital and you tell them, then they get scared and they want to medicate you. So it's almost that response to
Right.
what your experience is that can add to the distress.
Yeah, it's interesting because, I've been working in peer support for a decade, and I've been, working in inpatient hospital for almost 8 years. And it's so interesting because people, you think like, oh, there's the psychiatrist over there, there's the psychologist over there, there's all these different, traditional mental health people, and then there's the peers, right? The peers. And they think differently. But it's so interesting because there are so many clinicians that once they really start to understand that the picture is much bigger than they were ever taught in school. Like, I can't tell you how many people that went to Harvard and Yale and, Stanford, all these places, they're like, we didn't learn any of this. Like, we didn't learn any, we learned, tell people to take their meds. Yep.
Yeah.
And maybe go to therapy, because there is quite a few people who say that therapy for schizophrenics is dangerous, because, you're supposed to just never speak about your experiences. It's dangerous. Yeah. And so, people really are hungry for a different way. I'd say many people go into the work, especially people that are not making the money psychiatrists make, go into the work wanting to help people. And, the training, I'm sure, you were trained as a therapist, but the training and just the culture out in the workforce, it's not ideal to what those of us with the experiences need. But people really do seem really, really open. And I've seen a lot of perspectives change, and even some very unsuspecting psychiatrists I wouldn't have thought would really open their minds, but have really have transformed the way that they think about our experiences. Because, if only you could take a pill, right? And everything, all of our experiences, wouldn't that be easy? We wouldn't be fighting anything. There would be no social justice, anything. Like, we'd be like, give us the pills. But that just isn't how it works. We talked in a group the other day, and everyone in the room happened to be on the same medication. And we were talking about, wow, like, we're also all hearing voices right now, and I know for myself, I've been on medication for over 2 decades, and, a dream is to come off of it. Had I been presented with things like the Hearing Voices Network approach and, people that understood me from the beginning, do I think that I would have needed all kinds of medication? No. Do I know that at that time, when there was zero anything for me, that, snowing me wasn't going to help me, as far as, making me not really even care about anything anymore, including my voices. It was really a last resort that was used initially. And now I feel kind of like I'm stuck on them. You know, I try to reduce them and then I have to go back up. It feels like I'm crawling out of my skin. I appreciate though, Angela, people like you that, you know, that have successfully come off meds and don't say, oh, she's such a hypocrite. She's talking about alternatives and she's on meds, because, you know, I think I'm with my meds in a place you probably were, right? At maybe one time.
Yes, many times. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
So
why I like talking to you. I like talking to you because you can bring that different perspective in, a little bit of nuance, you know, that it's not either you love your medicine and you never want to come off, or you hate it and you never want to go back on and you regret the day you went on. There's always that gray area, you know, where I'm ambivalent. Like, I'm not sure if this is for me anymore or when I want to come off. And it's really hard. And I don't know when it's going to happen. And it might not ever happen. And that is okay. And there's no shame in that. And there's like, maybe I have regrets. Maybe I have goals for the future to come off, but we'll just kind of see how it goes, you know?
yeah, for me, the
So
withdrawal, even from the like a milligram, has been so brutal that I've been looking for this somehow this magical time in my life that's going to be like I can go to Vermont and like stay in some, you know, Soteria house and be able to come off meds. But it's not for me. I have to somehow find, you know, another way to make it work. But yeah, the withdrawal is so like it takes your life over. And so I've had no choice but to stay where I'm at with meds. And, you know, that speaks, I guess, to a lot of people's stories, maybe some people even watching right now.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, let's talk about that, because I know a lot of people in our audience are either in withdrawal or tapering. And so they might be experiencing some strange experiences, you know, that are not normal for them. And then there's also people that are watching within the Hearing Voices Network, the peer system, family members. So can you talk about ways in which HVN, you know, helps people kind of change their mind about what these voices are and how to work with them, and maybe some strategies?
Yeah, I would say, and this is, remember, everything is just my opinion, my perspective. I don't speak for other voice hearers. That's really one of our core, you know, values, is that we each speak for our own experiences. But I will speak to like the trends and kind of some of what I think is a consensus, which is, I would say one of the most difficult things about hearing voices, especially in the beginning, but even just the whole fight you go through for all the years with, you know, distressing voices, and then like, oh, I'll have a period where they're not bad, you know, or then they take my life over again. And is that, you know, once you get to a point where you accept that you hear voices, that you're like, I'm probably going to hear these for the rest of my life, no matter whether I'm on meds or not off meds, like, you know, this is my life and I need to learn to work with it, you know, and really make peace, you know, and get to know my voices. So that's really one of our biggest things is, you know, we encourage people to talk to their voices, name your voices, like, you know, ask your voices questions, really try to balance out the power differentials, because, you know, like the person who asked about distressing voices in the beginning, you know, that's the big part of the distress is the power imbalance, where, you know, like for myself, when my voices would control everything. Like they told me when I could eat, when I could go to the bathroom, what I could eat, you know, who I could speak to. At one point, they filtered or I had to filter all of my thoughts and all of my speech through them. If someone spoke to me and asked me a question, I had to ask them. If I had a thought, immediately I would have to ask them if this was a correct thought. And I literally stopped knowing how to think and talk and had to like reteach myself at one time. Other people called it negative symptoms and said that I was, you know, flat and had no, you know, motivation, no, you know, wouldn't do anything. And for me, there was a whole other story, and that speaks to like the diagnosis, like not really telling the whole story. But yeah, so we encourage people to get to know their voices, negotiate, right? I'm reading this book, and I've read it so many times now. And it's called, oh my gosh, it's an FBI negotiator. My God, it's called Never Split. I'll think of it in a minute, but it came out a couple of years ago, and he uses techniques, you know, about never split the difference. But he uses techniques about, you know, dealing with difficult people in your life, and voices are very similar. Like I have found techniques, in this book on negotiating, that he did with FBI, cases. And I use them sometimes in my voices or teach other people. There's so many different things, even just like movement, reading, like if your voices are like being really loud, sometimes like for me, reading out loud or reading and making sure I really pronounce everything in my head kind of gives me my voice back. So I would say, there are so many strategies. There's as many strategies as there are people and voices. And really, what we believe is that nothing will work for everyone, but something will work for everyone, right? So just keep trying. And, I encourage people that are listening, either, people with their own experiences or family and friends, to check out a Hearing Voices Network USA, either, a peer support group or one of the family and friends groups, and get to know other people, realize that you're not alone. And, you can learn from hearing other people. You can learn from hearing yourself. And, yeah, so that's a little bit of, we use, even, it's funny, our society has such a fear, and sometimes we in the Hearing Voices movement do too, but are talking about like violent voices and taboo voices. And, for me, I've really seen that I would say pretty much every person with violent voices, including myself, it's often been something like, unexpressed anger, you're punished for anger, or, shamed, or you just not allowed to show it, which if you're in the system, it's a very bad thing to show anger. It's seen as, a symptom and agitation and something to be medicated. But yeah, so with something like that, it's like people say, oh, you're hearing auditory hallucinations, you're hearing command hallucinations, but there are ways to work with that. What is this voice saying? This voice is telling me to break something or hit someone. Well, what is it really telling me? Is it telling me maybe this person is a threat to my life and that they're not helping me live the way I want to live? Do I have to do what this voice says? Voices can even sometimes be tricked. Like I've seen somebody, instead of like spitting in someone's face, they spit on the floor, and like people come up with all kinds of bargains and deals to get through some of those real distressing times. But the real key is that we have to be able to talk about our voices, and people have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that alone could change society right there.
Yeah, it's just so clear to me. There's like this dichotomy of, if you view a person that's suffering from these extreme experiences as mentally ill, dangerous, they have this diagnosis that stays with them forever, you interpret everything that they're doing in that way. Do you know what I'm saying? You're seeing it through that lens. But then if you think about it through the Hearing Voices lens, or not even hearing voices, just whatever this person is experiencing, there's a reason for it, there's meaning in it, and let's ask it questions or talk about it. Let's de-escalate the situation, because I know a lot of people, I've seen it myself in real life. I was in the psychiatric ward like 7 times. So I've seen people get extremely angry, violent. They start throwing things. They can't regulate because of their past trauma or whatever. And the nurse provokes them. And then it turns into even more trauma where they're forcibly injected. Then you're traumatizing them again. Then you're putting that in the record. That's going to stay with them forever. Sometimes they get transported to jail for assault. It's just like, it spins out of control, and it's all based on this thing, that this person is dangerous. I should be scared of them. What they're experiencing is scary, and I don't understand it, so I'm going to hurt them. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And it's funny because, feeling like safety can mean a lot of things, right? It can be like our emotional safety. It can be our physical safety. It can even be like safety in relationships. But it's funny because in the system for myself, I can only talk about myself, is, there were lots of things people would say, she's not being safe, and I did do things that scared people, but they also scared me. And, what I needed at that time was someone to say, like, let's hear about it. Like, let's tell us what, how do you feel? Like, what do you think it means? And you know, people talk so much about safety, but they ask the person that's unsafe so little about safety, like what it means to them, you know, how they feel, you know, like what is scaring you? What is, you know, what is the message behind, you know, those voices or that paranoia? And it's funny, the word paranoia, I do use it because it's a succinct way of explaining a set of experiences, which to me boils down to intense fear, very intense fear. And, you know, it's so interesting because all beliefs are basically a thought you think over and over, even though they have like meaning and they have a story and they have a connection. But like what we hold on to, every human being, is, you know, something that we choose to adopt in a lot of ways. And, you know, when people say, oh, that person's paranoid, they're, you know, they're dangerous, they don't understand that it's not just like random paranoia that falls from the sky. Like, ask the person, say to them, like, wow, what's scaring you? Like, what can I do to help you? You know, if you think someone's watching you outside the window, you know, can I stand by the window and make sure you're safe? You know, and if people are interested in paranoia, Peter Bullimore, who also does a ton of stuff in the Hearing Voices movement, he is the founder, one of the founders of the National Paranoia Network in England. If you check out their website, and they have a great newsletter, but he's incredible, and there's tons of resources about that experience on there.
I like that. Yeah, it makes me think of something. I hope you don't mind if I out us here, Jeannie, but a lot of times when we show the film, they say, oh, Angie, but you're so normal. Like, you're not really seriously mentally ill. You never were, you know, you're normal. And so, Jeannie, to me, when I talk to you, you seem completely normal and you're together and you have a job. And so I just want to like, just tell people, like, we, both of us have suffered greatly and have gotten, you know, one time or another, gotten ourselves in very sticky situations, medical or otherwise, you know, that that put us in that, you know, in this, whatever that even means. What does that even mean? But we were serious. It was serious. It was life or death. It was crisis. It was, you know, all these things. But I think what we have in common is, you know, we've kind of like learned how to redefine those experiences, or to work with them in a different way, or to, you know, think about them differently. For me personally, it's like I was just talking to somebody on Zoom before I started talking to you, but I was talking about like nowadays, you know, when I have these symptoms, whatever sensations, I don't know, whatever you want to call them, I can do this thing where I go very inside of myself, and I will go down this rabbit hole, and it's very dark and it's very sad and it's scary and it's shameful. And it's like all these like very negative, you know, things.
Yeah.
But instead of running to the doctor and saying like, help me, I'm like, I'm in this hole and I'm suicidal and whatever. It's like, no, I take it as a signal that I need social connection. I need to help to find someone that's friendly and loving and kind, to feel more safe with, to be able to talk about what I'm experiencing, that kind of thing. So instead of running to the doctor, I use it as like a signal, like, okay, time to go get some engagement here, you know? So, I just wanted to say that because we're just talking about this, like, it's almost like these other people that experience this, but I'm just bringing it back to real life, that like both of us, you experience these things now, and, you know, in present tense.
But and it was funny, we definitely bonded over our mutual dreadlocks that we had from not washing our hair. They were not, we talked about not being the cute dreadlocks, but the dirty dreadlock. Mine was like a rat's nest on my head, but I wish they were the beautiful ones. But and it's so interesting because that happens to me a lot in my job, is people will see me and they'll be like, that, you know, that's, you know, that's not the people we work with. But they didn't, you know, see me wandering around in the same clothes for 6 months, you know, and afraid to shower because arsenic was coming out of, you know, the water, and refusing to eat because I was being poisoned, or could taste all kinds of things that other people weren't tasting that were horrific. And they also don't see me today struggling. They don't see me, you know, when I'm hearing voices that are telling me that, you know, oh, someone's after me and I have to pull my car over. You know, you're right. Like, people, they hear us talk about it and they don't really understand that, like, oh, she's dressed, you know, like there's no way she
Yeah.
can hear voices. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, you know, that's why there are social justice movements. Like the Hearing Voices movement isn't just like a clubhouse or, you know, like a program. It's not any of that. You know, it is a collective group of people who say, no, you know, there's more to this story. You know, nobody that hears voices is alone. And, you know, we want to get the word out to people that, you know, it's not something to be taken away or medicated out of you. And, you know, medication, it's interesting because the Hearing Voices movement has a variety of people. There are some people on meds that find it helpful. And then there's other people that find it very harmful or have just chosen to stop taking it, you know, many things. But we really take like a pro choice, which I really think all of, you know, nobody should be forced to take medication. And you should also be able to come off of it, you know, when you want to. And yeah, so I don't even know where I was going with that about medication, but
Just that just that it's, you know, that it's happened to us. We've experienced these scary things, and I don't know, we've changed through it. We've grown through it in one way or another. And, you know, I don't know, it's like a destigmatizing it, sort of. I hate using the word stigma. I just hate it because I feel like it's a tool of the pharmaceutical companies, but really to say like, you don't know who's experiencing things that are different than you, and it doesn't make them disordered or dangerous. Like it's just a different experience.
Yeah, like I could meet somebody, and I'm not saying I have, but I could meet somebody who, you know, what the world thinks is this horrible like voice here that's done all these awful things. And like they hear voices, like they tell me, or I might, you know, might think it, you know, by if I saw them maybe talking to what I thought were voices. And I feel immediately at home. Like I'm like, I kick my shoes off. Like I feel so at peace and comfortable, because I feel like with people that don't experience what, you know, really, you know, unusual, intense things like I do, they just don't always get it. Like they don't, you know, somebody said it best in a group I was in recently. And, you know, he said to somebody that is like a traditional professional, he's like, you know, you guys can try, you can try to get it, but guess what? You don't know anything, you know. I don't know if we can swear in here, but
I like that. Yeah,
you
go
know,
ahead. I don't care. Go
yeah,
ahead.
you don't know shit, you know, we know shit.
Yeah.
And like that to me
Wow.
summed up all the work
I
I've been
like
doing
that.
for
I
all
like
these
that.
years. I was like, beautiful.
I like that. I like that. Yeah. And I wanted to say this earlier, but I'll just bring it in really quick, that I don't know if a lot of people in the audience know this, but people deemed with experiences like psychosis or paranoia or schizophrenia, they were considered like, there's no even point of giving them therapy.
Right.
They just ramble. They say strange things.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. There's nothing to work with there. Just kind of ignore them. There's not even really a therapy that we do with them. You know, there's been it's come around recently, like, I can't even remember the name of the therapies because they don't teach us in social work school. Like that's not even talked about. So this does really give them a different way, like a different, you know, I don't know, an in. And maybe it's a good thing that they don't have this therapy to talk them out of what they're hearing and the meaning that they has for them, and they can decide for themselves.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to mention
So sorry, Angela.
No, I'm done.
Okay.
Just wanted to mention that.
What I'd say about that, so it's interesting because I've been in therapy for 100 years. It feels like, no, I've been in therapy since I was like 14. And I've had a lot of therapists, right? And there were times I thought therapy actually did do more harm to me, and for sure did, like for sure. And what I would say to that is, you know, it's so interesting that people labeled with schizophrenia and schizoaffective disorder and any of the schizos, you know, that language, have been the ones that are, you know, pulled out as the people that can't respond to therapy and it's a waste of time. But what I say to that is I think that really highlights how dangerous some therapists can be. I have a therapist now who is not, she's never used diagnostic language once. She wants to hear about my experiences. She wants me to tap into what I believe. You know, it's like talking to, and she shares things about herself. Before that, I had a therapist for several years that was the trauma therapist. And it was one of the worst experiences of my life. And I didn't know it until the end. I thought I was like, there were times I thought I was losing my mind, but it was really the therapy.
Wow.
It was, you know,
Wow.
this belief that what she was doing was like a gold standard, like therapy, and that everyone with trauma should have this therapy. And for me, I found it to be a very destructive therapy. And I realized, no, Jeannie, it's not you. It's the therapist, and it's
There you
the
go.
oppressive therapy that tells you if you don't see your voices as parts, then they're not, you know, then you're not
Oh,
playing
yeah.
along and you're not getting, you know,
Oh,
recovered.
no.
So I blame the therapist, and I blame the therapy for boxing people in, as, you know, for this. And honestly, you can't always trust a therapist, right? It's sometimes a very dangerous experience, because one wrong word, I mean, you know, you've been in the hospitals, like
Oh, yeah.
anything
That's
could
it.
get any of
Yep.
us.
Yes. Even now, yesterday, when they asked me, are you experiencing suicidal thoughts or do you have any plans? I was like, how do I answer that? You know what I mean? Like, 'cause I better be careful what I say, because it could come back to haunt me. You know what I mean? It's like, you got to watch your P's and Q's. Oh my God.
Yeah, I have a
Yeah.
15-year-old.
So
Oh, sorry.
no, go.
No, I have a 15-year-old son, and I actually teach him. I teach him, if, you know, even if you're experiencing like really intense things, if someone asks you that you don't trust, that you know, don't 100% trust, do not go there. Like, do not, and you know, if they ever tell you you need, just, you do what you got to do and then get away. Like, you know, because it's dangerous at times for us.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so we got two questions left. I think we have a lot of
Sure.
good comments. People are really enjoying this, and they're saying this is so good, Jeannie. So they're
Ah,
enjoying this talk. So there's a little feedback. So let's move into, while we close up, how can family members be supportive to anyone experiencing something that's outside of the realm of what's considered normal? Loved ones, friends. Can you
yeah.
talk about that?
So this, I hope this doesn't sound harsh, but I'd say the first, I have to sit up for this. The first thing I would
Uh-oh.
say, family members, partners, friends, loved ones, it could be a neighbor, people supporting people or trying to support people. The first thing you need to do is really work on yourself. And by that, I mean being comfortable with being uncomfortable, being able to sit across from someone and let them tell you things that scare you, make you feel uncomfortable, you've never heard before. Maybe, you know, really work on yourself and realizing, wow, when that person talks about, you know, this thing, it triggers me. Like, it brings up fear in me that what if either that could happen to me? What if that is happening to me? There's, you know, we have a society that deems right thoughts from wrong thoughts, and, you know, and safety. But really being able to sit with that person, because, you know, if you are able to talk about your experiences, you're not living alone in your head, you know, really, kind of, like I used to say, like, or like I do often say in Hearing Voices groups, like, it was me and my voices against the world. Like, I couldn't connect with people. I couldn't connect with anyone. No one wanted to talk to me. They were afraid of me. And so that's the first thing. And then another thing is, I think it's really important for family members, especially, to be careful. And this is, you know, I have friends that are involved with NAMI, the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill, but I think be careful who you're getting your information from, because there are great people in NAMI, but they also have a very prescriptive, right, process where you go to a class that teaches you how to be a family member of a schizophrenic, and you do these things and you make sure they stay on meds, but it's way more complicated than that. And I think most people that have done the NAMI family to family class know that, because it's not a magic wand. And so I would say, you know, really, I encourage people to check out the family and friends group that HVN USA does. Ed Herzog, a family member out in the Bay Area of California, and Cindy Marty Hadge, a voice here out in Western Mass. I was going to call it Western Vermont. They founded it, and they've done tremendous work. And that's a place you can go and hear all kinds of perspectives and ways to cope with your own uncomfortability. So that's probably the first thing. But also believing your family member, like, they tell you this is what I believe them, really try to look at the emotion behind it. Like, what, you know, if you know, this person's paranoid, what, they must be so scared. How can I make them feel safe? How can I talk this through with them. And, can I tell them that, no, I'm not experiencing that. Wow, I just checked all of that. Everything's safe. Or, wow, it makes sense that you're safe. You've given your key to your apartment out to all these random people. And now, years later, you're worried someone's coming in, things like that.
Yeah.
Was that helpful?
Yes, it's so good. I
Okay.
think I want to share a personal story here just to like give you an example, the people in the audience. So I have a family member that's experiencing this sort of thing right now. And another family member called me and said, oh my God, this person's, experiencing this. We got to get her to the hospital like right now. Let's, you got to help her. And first of all, I'm like in a van 2,000 miles away, so I'm like, okay, but you're there, and this person's in crisis, and it almost felt backwards to me that because this person felt uncomfortable with what the other person was experiencing, we have to send them away and send them off,
right.
And I think that's the crux of the problem, that we're not there for each other. We've bought into this professionalized system where there's like somebody out there that's going to help and take it away and make it all better. And then
Right.
the person comes out of the hospital and they're going to be fine.
Right.
That is not the way it is. So I just want to hit home that it very much is like me. I'm like Jeannie. When I see people talking to themselves or in extreme distress, those are my people. Like, I'm not afraid of them. Because I've experienced those things myself, and I know where it comes from and how much fear they must be in to be feeling those things. So I totally agree with you. And I just wanted to make that, show that example. But
Yeah.
so on the same kind of tangent, I always like to leave our audiences with a little bit of hope and, a little bit of like, maybe the future will be better than the past kind of thing. So can you talk about maybe some transformations that you've seen, or some, even if it's like a 1% like new thought about, wow, I'm not crazy. What have you seen working with people in Hearing Voices Network or as a peer specialist?
Yeah. So, I can talk about the work I've done in the Hearing Voices movement, and my own experiences is, and really that's the best I can speak on is myself is, I went from a place where I believed I had to, like I mentioned, obey everything my voices told me to do. And it got me locked away for almost 8 months. I was in a hospital, and I remember it was almost 11 years ago, this Christmas Eve, I was let out, and I remember laying on the steps, drooling, because they had just given me a shot of Haldol before I left. And I was smoking a cigarette and waiting for my ride, and everybody was terrified for me to come home. And, I didn't care about anything. I just wanted to talk to my voices. I didn't even understand that I was hearing voices. And so with the Hearing Voices movement, you're not, not everyone wants to stop hearing voices. Like that's the truth. And most people that take meds don't stop hearing voices. And that's one of the real problems with having a medication only viewpoint is that what happens now, like I was talking about in group, what happens now, people are saying that I take the meds and I still hear voices. Like, now what? If we don't teach people that you have power with those voices, not just over them, not just, oh, I'm going to beat these voices. I'm going to be like, there's so many mental health advocates, like I see on Instagram. I don't know if you've seen this, but they're Caplata, I don't know if I said it right, the new medication for schizophrenia. They are using mental health advocates from Instagram, this is not a lie, in their campaigns and calling them lead schizophrenic patients. And they're using them in an advertisement, literally. And then those people are advertising on their Instagram stories. I wrote them. I was, I was like, this is so dangerous. And what happens when those people see Capletta and they take it? And they say, I'm still hearing voices that are telling me to hurt myself, or, and what a dangerous thing we're doing. So the Hearing Voices movement, yeah, it's an advocacy, social justice movement, but it's very different from, people that accept their illness and don't look outside of the very narrow box the diagnosis offers. And so what I've seen is people like myself go from being powerless to being powerful and learning to step into that power and realizing that, you know, even at its most distressing, like voice hearing is a gift. Like it is, you know, we always talk about it in groups, and anyone that might be listening that facilitates or has gone to an HBN group knows, like, we can do something that other people can't, whether it's from withdrawal, whether it's, you know, we're tapping into like a deeper, you know, understanding and a deeper vision of the world. If you can, you know, be in a place and be around people that let you really, you know, accept what you're experiencing and look for a deeper meaning. Like, what's the metaphor, right? If a voice is telling you that, you know, you need to die, well, maybe it's time to recheck your life, you know, what's going on in it, you know, and it's really, I'm trying to, there's like so much I could say on what the Healing Voices movement has done, but it's given people back their lives. And it's, you know, it's, you learn to live with your voices, not against them. And it's a never ending journey. And it's some days tiring and some days exhilarating. But realizing that you're not alone, you know, there is support. And that this is really your life's journey, just like somebody else that is doing something else and doesn't hear voices. Was that helpful?
That's perfect.
That was a big question, Angela.
I know it's a big question. You could write a book about that, I'm sure. Oh my gosh. All right. So we're ending, we're closing up on time. So can you give us some like closing thoughts, last words, and be sure to tell people where to find you. But also someone said, can you please explain where the family groups are?
Yeah. So anyone that's interested in groups, Caroline will answer your email. Give her a few days because there are a lot of emails, but Hearing Voices Network USA.org. The email for it is info@hearingvoicesusa.org. And just write, let, you know, in the email, you know, let them know if you are a person with your own experiences or if you're a family member or friend, and you'll get hooked up with groups. There's groups every night of the week, in all different time zones. So not to worry if, you know, you're in another time zone. So yeah, that's how you would get hooked up. And there are in-person groups. They're more patchy, and we're redoing our website for HBN, or working on that as the board. And we want to get, you know, everything cleared up as to what, you know, what's running here. So, you know, you can Google like HBN in your area, or Caroline, you know, when you send an email, can help you figure out if there's something running, if she's, you know, has that information. I do want to leave like a little teeny, there's a little poem. It's like 10 seconds, if that's okay.
Please. Yes, I love poetry.
So there's an incredible poet. Now, I learn all my knowledge is self-taught from reading. So I may pronounce this poet's name wrong. She's one of my favorites though. And Naira Waheed, and I can send you the poem after. But I've really tied this into voice hearing for people. And the poem is, no might make you, and this is really for people that are experiencing distressing voices. No might make them angry, but it will make you free. In case no one has ever told you, your freedom is more important than their anger. And so really realizing that, like, and that's for voice hearing or anything really, but if you're hearing voices that, you know, are trying to control you or distressing, I'm thinking back to that first question, just remembering that your freedom is more important than your voice's anger, your clinician's anger, your family members. So that was something I was hoping to leave positive.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much.
Great.
All right. This has been a great hour with Jeannie Bass. We've got lots of links down below for more information. She has a website. Can you talk about the website really quick?
Yeah, so it'll be Voices with Reason, and it's going to be jeanniebass.com, and it's going to have some of my writing, and I'm going to offer some coaching and some consulting, which I've done at other times. But I would love to connect with you, and thank you so much for having me here. It was amazing. I finally got to hang out with you.
I know. We have to do it in person again. I saw you in Boston, and you know, it was like a quick and fast screening. Yeah. I was like, dang, I wish I could hang out with her. So we will make it happen. Let's just let this COVID crap go away.
Yeah. And I have to say, it was incredible to see Medicating Normal in such a traditional clinical environment. It was, I was blown away.
I should probably say that. So I forgot, I left that out at the beginning, but Jeannie was at a screening that was at Advocates in Framingham, Massachusetts. And it was literally 140 people that used traditional mental health services. I mean, they literally were taken by bus from their group home to this facility. And we did a screening, and it was me and Shalimar up front. And we did a little panel discussion after. And I'll never forget that screening, because someone stood up and said, "You don't understand. I have been traumatized my entire life. If I don't take this medication, I'm going to kill myself."
Yeah.
And it really hit home to me that who am I to say, the meds are bad, that you shouldn't take them. For that person, and I'm not a med advocate either, okay? I'm a choice advocate. Like, you need to make the choice for you and do what's right for you. But that was really a wake-up call to me. Like, look at this woman is alive because she believes so heavily in that medication helping her, and it does, and whatever. So that was, but that's what the response was from people that were, highly traumatized and living in group homes. And yeah, it was an intense screening for sure. And that was,
and it speaks to how we don't really offer much else in
No.
ways of hope or support for people.
Yeah, and that's it. Yeah, so that's where I saw you in person last. Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
like a lifetime ago. All right, so to everybody else in the audience, thank you for joining us for this live discussion. If you haven't seen Medicating Normal yet, please check our website at medicatingnormal.com. I do want to say again and again that we will be on PBS. That's PBS, Public Broadcasting, whatever that stands for, in January. The first air date is January 4th in Austin, Texas. We will post the air dates very soon. Our station wrangler is getting them right now. So Medicating Normal is coming to your TV in your living room very, very soon, which I could not be more proud of. Also, we currently release new videos on our YouTube channel. If you just search on YouTube for Medicating Normal, there's like 180 clips over there and conversations just like this one. Lastly, if you'd like to support our outreach efforts to continue conversations like this one, please consider making a donation at medicatingnormal.com/donate. And that's all I got. Thank you for joining us today. In a couple days, I think our next interview is Professor John Reed from the UK, and he'll be talking about antidepressant withdrawal and a survey to study withdrawal effects in people like you and me. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Jeannie.
Yes. See you later.
See you later.
Bye.
All right. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
You too.